Hi, this is Melissa Ainslie. I want to welcome you back to the 11 Intuitions podcast. So, I've heard from several of you after the first episode, and ironically enough, a lady messaged within 2 minutes of watching it and saying, "How can I work with you?" That's basically how this works. When you have an ability like this and you live in fear most of your life, you find someone who has the same story as you. You want to find out more. You want to find out how to open up your gifts. That's basically what my podcasts are for. It's for people who have gifts. They don't know how to use them, or just to share experiences, because I know, like a lot of people, they don't have a place to turn to. They don't know who to talk to. I am open, vulnerable, real about how I've gotten my gifts, how I've used them. It's not all the great things that people say. There are some dark moments. I'm not afraid to talk about those. Today's episode is episode 2 of the 11 Intuitions podcast. It is entitled Grief, Expense Reports, and an Unexpected Guest. How my gift arrived. Today's episode, I want to take you back to a very specific season in my life, one that started in very deep grief and ended in a moment I could never have predicted. When my mom passed away, all I wanted to do was talk to her again. I went back to my childhood. You know how when we used to watch TV all the time when we were children. We saw the mediums on TV. I remember John Edward, James Van Praagh. They were my favorites. I just went out and searched. I saw that James Van Praagh had a class. I looked at his class. Then I also went to a workshop. And I even drove 2 hours just hoping something would click. But nothing came through. Then of all places, Spirit decided to show up while I was on a business trip. My very first trip after my mom's passing. I had my expense reports, my hotel receipts, but Spirit didn't exactly come with a price tag. So I did wonder, can you claim baggage fees for Spirit's carry-on baggage? I just traveled this past week. Can you charge for $35 for Spirit to come along with you? You can't, but these are the things that you question. This week is a story of how my grief cracked open a door, how Spirit slipped in when I least expected it, then how that one moment began this whole entire journey I did not even know I was ready for. So let's set the stage for what grief does. And let's talk about my mom. My mom is just such a sweet, sweet woman. We'll do a full episode about her one time, let you know about her. My mom and I didn't have the best relationship when I was younger. I had very low self-esteem when I was young, and I took it out on her. But by the time that I became an older teenager, my mom and I became best friends, and we stayed that way until she passed away. She was my guiding light. She was my best friend. Loved my mother. When my mom got sick, she had what I have come to find out later in life. They called it brittle diabetes. It was, I guess, type 1 diabetes. In adult, they were unable to keep that under control. My mom went into several diabetic comas. She had vascular dementia. She would have these little strokes behind her eyes. They called it stair-step dementia. So what that was is they'd do well, and then all of a sudden they'd get worse. My mom, she lived in an assisted living for a little while, then had a major stroke in at the back of her eye, had a heart attack, and had to come home. I remember visiting her that time in the hospital, and she made me promise, please don't ever send me back here again. I don't ever want to be back in the hospital. We looked into hospice. Because of where I worked, I knew some people that did hospice. They talked to her. Even her primary care physician was like, no, this woman does not need to be on hospice. But my mom did need to be on hospice. My mom needed to live at home. My mom could have died day to day, honestly. Her diabetes was that horrible, could not be controlled. And putting her on hospice gave her life back. It gave us her back for a short period of time. She was able to get her diabetes under control at that moment. It was such a blessing. I am so thankful to have been able to do that for her, do that for my dad. She was able to live several more months at home when I feel like she probably, had she not been on hospice, she probably would have gone into another coma, died pretty quickly after that. We're very thankful to have had that time with her. So what happened? My mom, like I said, had another episode. Her dementia was getting worse. She had already forgotten who my dad was. That was very hard for him. He was her main caregiver. And I remember going down one day, and I used to wear scrubs when I worked at the hospital. I came over. I was talking to her. She asked me a question. She didn't know who I was. That devastated me because I really was the only person that she remembered. That connection was gone. That broke me. Having your own mother, your best friend, your confidant, your everything, forget who you are. I think that day was the day that I disassociated from everything. It's the day that it started the path that I was going down. I came home, cried, and the depression was really, really bad. I remember when I would go down to see my mother, that my hands would literally hurt. So it would be the palms of my hands, and I would feel this like lightning. It would feel like just really like lightning would hit them. I would have to like pull my hands away from her. And this really prevented me from going to go visit my mother. It was so painful. I had no idea what it was. But it was only when I would get close to her. I now come to find out that this was my gift awakening, that I was being kept away from her. My energy was keeping me away from her, so I didn't feel things from her. Honestly, I knew that my mom wasn't there anymore. I have learned so much about patients with dementia. Also, they're tethering. So they've got one foot here, one foot up there. I really felt my mom wasn't there. My dad was like, you need to come down and see her. You were going to regret not seeing her. I just had this knowing. Again, then I didn't know what that was, but I just knew she wasn't there. He would call me on the days that she was there. I'd go visit her. She'd remember me. So we're coming into Christmas. I don't remember that Christmas, but I knew that things were getting close. Here we are in February. It is our anniversary. My husband and I get to spend the whole entire day together. I get a phone call from my dad. He says, I need you. I need your help. I can't get your mom off the toilet. So I went down there, and my mom is not her. She's not my mom. She's not with it. I knew this was it. I knew this was the time. I helped him get her off the toilet. We get her into her hospice bed, and I told Dad, I said, this is the beginning. He's like, no, she's just having a bad. I said, Dad, you know what DKA is, which is diabetic ketoacidosis. I said, we've seen it so many times with her. She's going into it. I said, Daddy, remember, I promised her she will not go back to the hospital. He said, okay. I said, you know that this is it, Daddy. She's going to go. And he said, well, call the hospice nurse. I said, okay, I'm going to call her right now. And I called her, and the hospice nurse came and said, no, this is not the end for her. We'll treat her. I said, no, this is the end for her. This is the end. She didn't believe me. So the next morning she came, just as I knew my mom had worsened, and the hospice nurse apologized to me. She said, I'm so sorry. I cannot believe how rapidly she got worse. I said, I know my mom. And she said, okay, well, it is going to take several days for your mom to pass away. So these are the signs you need to look for. Let us get her some morphine and make her comfortable. I said, okay, we prepared. And talking about this is just really hard, bringing that back. But, talking about it now, it's just like I did have those gifts. I just didn't know it, that clear knowing. You just know. We just prepared. I spent the whole day with her and my dad. My dad said, honey, go home. It's going to be several days. Just go home, get a good night's sleep. I was like, Daddy, how do you get a good night's sleep when you know what's coming? He said, honey, just get a good night's sleep and come back in the morning so you're refreshed so you can spend the whole day with her again. I said, okay, Daddy. I only lived 2 houses down. I went home and I got as much sleep as I could. I remember before I woke up, she was in my dream. And I remember hearing her say, honey, take care of your daddy. He's going to need you. She was there. It was just like people say a visitation dream. And I just knew it. That was her. I woke up. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God, my mom was in my dream. I called my dad and I said, what's wrong? He said, well, she's gotten worse and I'm giving her morphine now. I said, okay. I said, let me get my shower. I will be right down. So, I was shaking, I was panicking. I told my husband, I said, I've got to hurry, but I knew I needed a shower. I got the quickest shower I've ever taken. I hurried up. I was headed to the door. I answered it. It was my daddy, and he said, she's gone. I just said, I'll be right there. I went running, and I haven't run since then, but I went running. I literally ran from the door down to their house, through their door, through the kitchen, into her room. She was not breathing. She wasn't breathing. And I let out this guttural scream of just no. How could you? You knew I was coming. And I just apologized to my daddy. I'm like, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He's like, what are you apologizing for? I said, I wasn't here. He said, I wasn't here either. He said, I literally walked out the door to get her morphine and she died. In my head, and again, while hearing this, in my head, I heard the song. My mother loved Vince Gill so much. I heard the song Go Rest High on That Mountain in my head, and I knew she was okay. How do you let go of your mother? Then I got mad at her. Why did you die alone? I held on to that for so long, that she died alone. And I just couldn't fathom why she would do that, why she didn't let me be there with her. I remember my daddy telling me, you would not have wanted to see what she looked like. So basically, the rest of the time was a blur, just trying to go back to it. It's still a blur, but I remember it's numb. You're just sitting there staring off into space. And I remember I have to go to the Black Book. I remember whenever I die, go to the Black Book. And I got the note that she wrote about what she wanted when she died, who she wanted to come say goodbye to her, who she wanted around her, how she wanted to look. We called the hospice nurse. And the hospice nurse made her pretty. Her dogs got to say goodbye to her, and her dog even left his toy right by her pillow. Her dog knew that she had gone. My mom didn't want a funeral, and then they basically took her away. That was it. She didn't get cremated for a couple weeks. I don't know what happened. And we got her ashes back, and that was it. And my dad told me basically after I took that time off for her, he's like, you go back to work. You've got to get back. You cannot sit around. You cannot be depressed. You've got to go back to work. I said, but how do you get back after you lose your best friend? He's like, you can't sit around. You've got to get back to life. And, looking back now, that was the worst thing that I could have ever done. But looking back now, it shaped me to be able to help people. So what does that look like? Well, you put on a face like nothing's wrong. Then remember when I said I was disassociating when she forgot me? Well, I just slipped back into that disassociation. I worked, then I came home, and I basically couldn't do anything else. I was a mother. I had 2 children, but I don't remember functioning. I had high functioning depression, but I don't remember functioning. People had to pick up for me. I could function at work sometimes. I remember very much watching things on my phone while I worked. I had to do things to keep myself busy. I still was very a high performer, but I had to watch things in the background. I don't know if that was me trying to get my mind to not think about things. But, people would check on me and be like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good. Things are good. Yeah, I'm good. But it wasn't until a year later when I was not good. And what does not good look like? Well, remember when I told you that I was in the shower when my mom was dying? Well, your brain starts remembering things about how you were somewhere when something traumatic happened. So it tries to keep you from doing those things. But those are things that you need to do, right? So even to this day, I still have issues with the shower. I hear that it's very common in people who have trauma and common in people that have depression. But when I get low, the shower is one place that I don't want to be, but it's somewhere I need to be. But I was avoiding that because, again, why are you in the shower when your mom's dying? That's where my brain was going. So, I put it off for a day, and then 2 days, and then 3 days. But then, by the 4th day, it's like, nope, you get your butt in there. Okay, I'm in the shower. And, did people notice? Probably. Did anybody say anything to me? No. It's just these things that you can look back on and go, I wish people would have noticed, so I could have gotten help earlier. I remember talking to a friend after I got back from, well, I'll tell you after I got back from what, but, she said, well, yeah, I did notice, but then nobody says anything to you. And that's sad. It really is. People see that you're falling apart, but nobody says, can I help you? So it wasn't until after the first anniversary of my mom's passing and I start having issues at work. And I have this big event I'm trying to put on, and the pressure keeps getting more and more and more. And I'm trying to be functional. I'm trying. And one night there's a late night meeting, and I have another thing put on me, and I just cannot take one more thing. Not one thing. I'm driving home on the highway. My brain goes to, you don't need to be here anymore. I was like, you know what? I just need to be with her. That will solve everything. I'm just driving down the highway. I'm like, okay, this is it. I cannot do one more thing. I cannot be more for these people. My mom was my everything. I was ready to end it. And the steering wheel got moved because I was moving it the other way. It got moved. It jolted me. I was like, holy shit, what was that? So, yeah, that was kind of jarring to me. But I knew that day had to really stop what I was going through. So I said something to 2 people, and thankfully they listened. They're like, you need to get help. You need to get help. And if you don't get help, I'm going to start telling people what you're telling me. And then my dad's ex-wife, so my sister's mom, she passed away too. My brain went, no more grief, no more death, nothing, no more. And I started having physical pains. I started having chest pains. I started having shoulder pain. They had no idea what was wrong with me. Come to find out now that this is all grief. I ended up in the ER. I was in so much pain. Again, there's nothing wrong with you. MRI, nothing wrong with you. But the pain was horrific. How do you get pain pills for nothing wrong with you? So I finally had to call my psychiatrist and tell her, I need a break. Do you give breaks to people? Can I get time off for this? She said, yes. She said, you fit into a class of people who have very, very high functioning depression. But if you call me and tell me you need a break, I will give you a break because you're in that class of people who do something and we don't see it coming. So yes, I will give you a break, but do you need to be hospitalized? I said, no, I do not. I said, I will be okay. I just need to go into therapy. I've already lined up a therapist who will help me with grief, and I promise you I will do this. She said, okay, as long as you promise. And she did. I told my work that I was taking time off for my shoulder. I only told the bosses why I was taking it off because of grief. I said, my sister's mom just died. I said, I can't take one more thing. My brain is going to not function anymore. I'm having a nervous breakdown. And I did. I had a nervous breakdown. Again, it's the same feelings as the grief, but even worse. My legs literally felt like they were bricks. It was awful. When I walked into the therapist office down that long hallway, it literally felt like my legs had bricks. And I was just walking down there. I had to go to therapy every 3 days. Every 3 days. The first session was nothing but crying. I had panic attacks every 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes, panic attacks. This is what a nervous breakdown is like. It's because I did not deal with my mother's death. I went back too soon. And I was diagnosed with complicated grief. It was as if my mom had just died. But when I tell you that nervous breakdown saved my life, it really did. I got the therapy that I needed. And my therapist that first day, she said, all I'm asking you to do every single day is to get at least 7 or 8 hours of sleep, because I really wasn't sleeping. And you need to take a shower at least every other day and get 15 minutes of sunshine every day. That's it. That's all I'm asking you to do. It's not a lot. I had to be in control of something, and then I had to focus on every 15 minutes. That's it. 15 minutes. It's not a lot. And if I couldn't focus on that, then it needed to be 5. So the first week was really, really difficult for me, but I showed up every 3 days to those sessions, and they were lifesavers. We talked about a lot. Then we talked about mediums, because after my mom died, I started looking into classes. I couldn't get anything. I thought I was a failure. But halfway through my therapy, my therapist said, why don't you do something for yourself? Why don't you get that thing and pick it back up, that thing that made your eyes light up? I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, mediumship. Whenever you talked about it, your eyes lit up. I was like, I wasn't any good at it. She said, why don't you just try? All right, I'll try. So I went home and I started watching the videos again, and nothing really helped, but I promised her I would try and I would keep doing it. And, things started feeling better. The depression lifted a little bit. I started having a renewed sense. And one thing that I did leave out is my mom died in February. And in September that year, I went to a workshop. I saw that James Ron was going to be near my town, 2 hours away. So he was going to be doing readings on a Friday and a Saturday night, and doing a workshop on a Saturday. I was like, oh, this is just amazing. So I signed up for all 3 of them. Friday night, I got VIP for both nights. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a reading. I just know it. I'm in such grief. I need to hear from my mom. She's going to come through. No, nothing. But it was really neat to see him, see how he does it. Just praying one day I'll be able to do that. And then Saturday I went to the class. I couldn't get anything, but I did meet a lady. She was just absolutely amazing. I was just stunned at her gift. And then she brought my mom through, and I just bawled like a frickin' baby, bawled. And I had one question. Why did you die when you knew I was 2 minutes away? And she said, Mother knows best. Mother knows best. I'll be damned if she didn't know what she was doing. She knew what she was doing. She did not want me there. So basically, I'd been beating myself up since February, blaming myself, basically, because I thought I failed her, but she's the one that did it because she was trying to save me. I was amazing. But also on that day, I stopped looking into mediums because I compared myself to this woman, compared myself to her. But she had been doing it longer than I had. The other thing is I was so mucked and mired in grief that there's no way that I could have talked to her. So during my therapy, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to set up a session with this lady. So I did. My daughter and I drove 2 hours to go see her, and we had a beautiful 2-hour session with my mom. It was amazing. During that session, my mom said I was going to get a new job. I was going to go back to where I came from. It really just gave me a renewed sense of what I needed to be doing, where I needed to go. And I so appreciated that reading. I felt like I had just been given a roadmap on where I needed to go. And so I called someone and I said, you'll never guess, I just had a reading and my mom said this. And she told me, okay, wow, someone just quit and we have an opening. And it was my old job. I was like, what? Are you serious? I applied and I got my old job back. It was a job that I had left 10 years prior. I left because people died and I couldn't handle it. And here I am coming back. I was being guided to go back. I had no idea why. I know now, but I didn't know why. And it was like I was getting my life back little by little. So I go back to the job that I was doing. I put in my notice and tell them that I'm leaving. I don't think it was a big shock to them. Maybe it was a big shock. I'm not sure. And then I go to my new job. And this job, quickly, I get to be on a business trip. I was like, oh, wow, this is exciting. I get to travel again. I'm happy again, and I'm feeling really good. I am going to go on this business trip. And so I thought, I am going to be on a plane with like 100 people. Wouldn't it be cool if I'm able to open up to spirit during this time? So I went back to the course and I did a few of the exercises, and the most crazy craziest thing, the most amazing thing happened. It felt like a fire hydrant was going out of my head, all of this energy. It felt like I was seeing my life pass through my eyes. All the negativity, everything was leaving my head. For 30 minutes, I just laid there, and this energy just went through me. And I was like, holy crap, what was that? That is just really creepy and scary, neat, wonderful, amazing. All these emotions just went through me. But I knew that this was part of, I don't know if I was activating something or what. But I didn't feel any different afterwards, so I was like, okay, this is weird. So I get up early, I go to the airport. I'm going with a coworker, somebody I knew not a lot really well, but we get on the plane. We're at a small airport, and then we go to a bigger airport, and then we get on another airplane. I'm at the window. She's talking, and all of a sudden I hear something in my head. Then I was like, what is that? That's weird. Okay. Then I don't hear anything anymore. So we go about our day. Then we have our meeting, and then we're out doing shopping, and we're sitting down, and we are just sitting there eating, and then all of a sudden I start hearing something. I was like, what is going on? And I ask her, do you hear that? She goes, what are you talking about? I said, I just heard a voice. Then I said, wait a minute, do you believe in mediums? She said, so I was like, okay, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think I am one. I said, let me ask you some questions. And so that whole entire day, into the night, and on the airplane ride home, I started giving her messages from her dad, who was passed. It wasn't like, like I do now, where I give, just long messages. It was like, okay, he's showing me this. Okay, he's telling me this. He's telling me this. Why is he showing me this? And that was my first reading. And it just so happened that that day was her birthday. I couldn't believe it. So my excitement, her excitement, and I was just like, thank you for allowing me to do this for you. Thank you. And that was my first reading I ever gave anybody, ever. But it was because I had done that exercise, the opening up to spirit, and everything had gone through my head, the energy, everything. And so something had to have been different. I just didn't know, I wasn't able to do it before. I was just so excited. And I mean, we got home, I hugged her. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. She's like, I'll never forget this birthday. So the next day I get on Facebook and I'm like, I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm a medium, if you don't want to be my friend anymore, because this was in 2017 and we're in 25. Now, if you don't think that's a long time ago, for mediumship it was. I lost friends, I lost family over this. People didn't want to be associated with me. They thought I was crazy or something, and I honestly didn't care. I did hide it. I'm not as open as I am now. God, I wouldn't have done a podcast back then if you had even asked me. But I'm able to do that now because of everything that I've gone through. But I was like, if anybody wants to practice with me, please let me know. People would message me, and then I would start writing things down in a notebook. I used to be a court stenographer, so I love to document stuff. So I would write just what I would hear or see, and it would just be words. It wasn't anything big or anything. I would just do readings that way. And then I would take pictures, send the pictures of the notes that I would give, and I would do readings that way. And so that's how I got my gift. I thought at first it was my imagination. Thankfully, she was there. She was able to validate it. Like, I remember, we were sitting there looking up at the TV, and I'm like, why am I seeing a pickle? Am I seeing a pickle? And really, it's just like that. That's why, spirit, it's just, you really do think that you're making it up. But, her dad was there, and he was just giving me all of these things. But then there were also tender moments, things that I never would have known, things that she didn't share with people. These are the first steps. These are the first moments in mediumship that people don't really talk about. And they're such special sacred times. When I left her at the airport and I was driving home, I heard a familiar voice. And I don't hear them very often, like you hear people talking. but I knew it was my mom, and I cried all the way home from the airport. She just wanted to let me know that she was there and that she was proud of me and that she would be with me for a very long time. That meant so much to me. I was able to ask her questions, and it just was such a special, special moment to know that she was with me and that I finally had this gift that I had dreamt about since I was younger, since I saw the shows when I was younger. And, she told me that it's going to be so much more than what I'm doing, here doing this podcast. She's still here. And that I would help a lot of people. And I had no idea at that time what this would expand to. Even now, here we are in 2025. I still have no idea what they're going to have me do. It's going to be a lot, but I just really wanted to share with you what it was like for me to get my gift. And I really do believe that it is a gift. And, I can be given something, but I really did have to work hard at it. That's where we will go into the next podcast. But, the realization that this was an imagination, it was real, and that her passing really had opened something in me. And, I was afraid that it would be shut again, so that was definitely something that I had to struggle with. But, at the time, this was my very first step into mediumship, and it was so beautiful. So that was the beginning. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. It definitely wasn't what I thought mediumship was supposed to look like. On TV, it's just perfect and they get everything right. You're not stumbling. It's not a pickle. It started with heartbreak. It was fumbling around with the classes where I felt like I couldn't get anything. And then Spirit showed up on a work trip. And they had a boarding pass of their own. But looking back now, I can see that my mom's passing wasn't just a devastating loss. It was also the opening that allowed my gift to awaken. And really, without her leaving, I might not have been pushed into this path at all. So next time I'll share with you those early years and what it looked like, the bumps, the bruises, and the times that I quit. And then we'll talk about some of the hundreds of people that Spirit has brought to me in order to help them through their own grief. Because while at the beginning wasn't easy, it was exactly what I needed to get to where I am today. So I want to thank you for listening. And remember, Spirit doesn't always wait for the right time or the right place or the right budget line. So sometimes they just show up, and all you can do is follow where it leads. So thank you for listening to the second episode of 11 Intuitions podcast. And if you want to find out where we are, just go to www.11intuitions.com and you can find us there. Thank you.